looking at the book of Song of Solomon. First couple of weeks we talked about practicing romancing and practical things you can build to help build each other up. Last week we started a message that we weren't able to finish entitled Affair-Proofing Your Marriage. And I stated then that it was so important for us to do what we can to protect our relationships. And so I'm going to ask you to turn once again to Song of Solomon, chapter 2. I read this verse last week. I'm going to read it again just to familiarize ourselves with where we're at. I will go back and give you a couple of points, and then we'll pick up where we left off. Song of Solomon, chapter 2, beginning with verse 1. The lady is speaking. I merely arose from the land of Sharon, a lily from the valley. And he speaks to her, my darling, when compared to other young women, you are like a lily among thorns. She says, and you, my love, are an apple tree among the trees of the forest. Your shade brought me pleasure, your fruit was sweet. You led me to your banquet room and showered me with your love. Refresh and strengthen me with raisins and apples. I am hungry for love. Put your left hand under my head and embrace me with your right arm. Young women of Jerusalem, promise me by the power of the deer and gazelles never to await in love before it is ready. I hear the voice of the one I love as he comes leaping over the mountains and hills like a deer or a gazelle. Now he stands outside our wall looking through the window and speaking to me. And the man speaks, my darling, I love you. Let's go away together. Winter has passed, the rain has stopped, flowers cover the earth, and it's time to sing. The cooing of the doves is heard in our land. Fig trees are bearing fruit, while blossoms on the grapevine fill the air with perfume. My darling, I love you. Let's go away together. You are my dove hiding among the rocks on the side of the cliff. Let me see how lovely you are. Let me hear the sound of your melodious voice. Our vineyards are in blossom. We must catch the little foxes that destroy the vineyards. And she speaks, my darling, I am yours and you are mine. As you feed your sheep among the lilies, pretend to be a young deer dancing on the mountain slopes until daylight comes and shadows fade away. We're reading an intimate love letter between a couple. One of the things that catches my attention here is verse 15. Our vineyards are in blossom. We must catch the little foxes that destroy our vineyards. Folks, it's so important that we protect our relationships. I think it's important for us to protect our marriage relationship. I think it's important for us to protect the church family relationships. And even more important, I think we need to protect our relationship with God the Father. Because there are foxes out there looking to destroy whatever they can in those relationships. Jesus says a thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but I come to give you life and give it more abundantly. We have an adversary out there, and they will do anything and everything to destroy our testimony, our witness, our walk, and our families. Look at the state of our country. Look at the state of the world where families are disintegrating. And as it disintegrates, so are relationships around the world. That might sound political, but I firmly believe if the families can stay strong, a mother and father with children. There are so many single mothers just in Tucson, let alone the world, raising their children without a father. And the world is telling us that fathers are not necessary. And they are. And men, rather than fight for that manhood that God wants us to have, we kind of wither away. And we need to take some firm stands. So, how to affair-proof your marriage. This is not just about a marriage relationship. It is also about our spiritual relationship with God, because we are prone to infidelity, particularly when it comes to our relationship with God. And nothing ruins a family more than infidelity. And some of you probably fact-checked some of those statistics I gave you last week. I think they're fairly accurate. You might get slightly different numbers, but the one that stands out to me is 69% of marriages break up as a result of an affair being discovered. 69% of the relationships are destroyed because of infidelity. And here's the amazing thing to me. Listen, this is just amazing to me. Despite our tendency to be adulterous in our spiritual life, are you following what I'm saying here? Being unfaithful to God, God still loves us. Isn't that amazing? And He stands ready to forgive us. And some of us, and I don't want to be pulling off scabs or tugging at wounds that you've had in the past. God is willing to forgive you. We ought to be willing to forgive others. Sometimes building that trust may be difficult. And I don't know what that looks like when somebody has fulfilled and have been restored. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how long it takes. But however long it takes, it's worth doing. But it can all be avoided if we affair-proof our relationships. And last week I said we need to make a commitment to make a commitment to God's standard when it comes to our relationships. We need to agree with God on marriage and sex. We need to affirm God's standard publicly. And then I said we need to magnify the consequences of what we do. There was I think I said when I was growing up, I was really fearful of doing something I don't want to do because my father would find out and he'd get the belt after me. Sometimes I've acted appropriately to avoid the belt. Now I have to act appropriately because I fear God's judgment in my life. A loving father correcting his children. I can't think of anything more unloving than not correcting your children. So I need to constantly remind myself of the devastation and destruction of infidelity, and understand that infidelity is ultimately selfishness. And then I concluded last week by telling you why I tend to be faithful. I love Jesus, I love my wife and kids, and I am fearful of God's judgment. So we caught up? Point number 3. I need to maintain my marriage. And before I go any further, each and every one of us on a daily basis need to do maintenance upkeep on our relationship with God. God's not moved. God's still where He's always had been. Sometimes we move, and we need to understand it's just as important to maintain that relationship before all others. And if we're maintaining that relationship, then other things kind of fall in line. But we need to understand in maintaining our marriage that the needs of men and women are so very different. I don't know if you noticed, they're so very different. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 3, Paul is writing to us. And he says, a man should fulfill his duty as a husband, and a woman should fulfill her duty as a wife, and each should satisfy the other's needs. It's that last part I want us to pay attention to. I don't need to worry about my needs. I need to worry about my wife's needs. My wife doesn't need to worry about her needs. She needs to worry about my needs. And it's interesting how when I'm meeting her needs and she's meeting my needs, guess what? Everything is going along just fine. But some of us are very selfish. We want our needs met before we meet somebody else's needs. And that's not the way it works in God's economy. You can find various studies that give you similar results that I'm about to share with you. But I want to share with you the 5 most basic needs, the top 5 needs of most men. Most. That is, you can go, well, that doesn't pertain to me. Most men. Maybe it doesn't pertain to you individually, but generally speaking, these are the top 5 needs for men. You ready? Sexual fulfillment, number 1. Number 2, I'm going to stop. I thought about playing the Family Feud game and have the men say, what are the top 5 needs of women? And have the women say, what are the top 5? But then I got to thinking, Family Feud, we shouldn't be feuding. And I got to thinking that we would have so much fun. But folks, this is serious stuff. This is serious business. And it's okay to laugh in church. It's okay to have fun in church. And we might do that someday in a marriage retreat. But I'm here to tell you, these things are very serious. Number 1 is sexual fulfillment. Number 2, recreational companionship. Number 3, an attractive spouse. Number 4, domestic support. And number 5, admiration. You see them all up on the board? But notice 1 through 5. You can do different surveys. You'll get different results, but they'll be very similar to this. The top 5 needs of most men. Now let me show you the top 5 needs of most women. And again, these are not my list. Somebody went to the trouble of doing this. I'm sure there is a scientific process behind it. But I didn't do well in statistical analysis. I barely passed. And I'm not even sure I did that. I just had a pathetic look on my face, and he gave me a C anyway. Top 5 needs of most women. Affection and romance. Number 2, conversation. Number 3, honesty and openness. Number 4, financial support. And number 5, family commitment. And as you look at the list, you might say, oh, that sounds so chauvinistic. I want you to understand the survey didn't survey men about women's needs. These guys surveyed women about their needs. Now, have you taken a good look at that list? I want you to take a good look at that list. Something glaring stands out to me. It just pops out, and it's so obvious that we might overlook it. Do you see the list behind me? Do you see do you see what stands out? What stands out in that list? They're not the same. They don't match up. In fact, nothing on this side matches up with that side. Men and women are different. They're different. Not good, not bad, just different. Gary Smalley is a clinical psychologist who's a Christian, has written a few books on this subject. And he surveyed men and women, but he asked the question differently. The question he asked men and the question he asked women were the same, but the question was different. And what he said is this: what do you like to do with your spouse? What is your favorite activity that you would like to do with your spouse? And he listed 20. And not a list of 5, but a list of 20. And it looked very much like this. The first 5 never matched. Guys, listen. If you're a guy in here, listen to me. Most women said the things they like to do with their husbands, the favorite thing they like to do with their husband, ranked number 12. Can you guess what it was? Gardening. Number 12 on the list was gardening. You know what number 13 is? The first thing on the men's side. More women would prefer to be doing something with their husbands in gardening than sexual fulfillment. That just blew me away. Because our world tells us something different. And the reality is what it is. Men and women are different. We need to understand that our spouses have different needs, and then find a way, in some cases, to go out of our way to meet those needs. Gina, I was going to have Gina come up here, and if I get out of line, she just may jump up here anyway. And we were talking about intimacy. You know how men spell intimacy? S-E-X. You know how women spell intimacy? T-A-L-K. Look at those lists. Doesn't that sound right? We need to understand, we need to meet those needs. We need to make it our full-time business to learn about those needs, determined to meet those needs to the best of our ability. I want to be careful here because people can be selfish. Can you believe it? I don't know, some spouses are just selfish. You go out of your way to meet their needs, but they're not doing anything to respond to yours. And that can be frustrating. One of the things I do talk about in my premarital counseling sessions with couples before they get married is we talk about unspoken expectations. And this is true not just for couples, it's true for people in the church, it's true when we approach God. We have certain unspoken expectations that we put on others. They don't even know we have put that expectation on them, but when they fail to fulfill that expectation that they don't even know they're supposed to be fulfilling, we've got a problem. And it goes back to selfishness. My unspoken expectation towards my wife, if I haven't spoken to her, I might get upset because she's not meeting that expectation, but she may have no clue that's an expectation that I've expected of her. Why? Because I'm selfish. So when I'm talking about this, we're talking about mutually coming together, speaking about expectations, needs, and how we're going to go about meeting that. And there's certain things just isn't going to happen. And it's not, everybody brings baggage to their relationship. Right? And usually it's not carry-on baggage either. It's usually a steamer trunk. That makes us who we are. But I would tell you, I think after 42 years, almost 43 years of marriage, I'm hoping that I have given up a lot of that stuff that was in my trunk. It's taken me some time. Well, I still have a big suitcase that has lots of wheels on it, but it's not as big as a steamer trunk anymore. We got to maintain this relationship, and we need to understand there's different needs. Number two, when it comes to understanding needs and maintaining a relationship, we need to take care of our personal appearance. Taking care of your personal appearance. Don't get ahead of me. Let me read from you from the Book of Solomon, chapter 1, chapter 7. The woman speaking, "The king is lying on his couch, enchanted by the fragrance of my perfume." The man speaks in chapter 7, "The fragrance of your breath are like apples. May your kisses be as exciting as the best wine." And you notice the little ellipses there? I can't talk about the little ellipses. You guys have to go to the Bible and read it for yourself, okay? The woman speaking, "There the mandrakes give off their fragrance, and the finest fruits are at our door, new delights as well as old, which I have saved for you, my lover." Personal hygiene is a part of personal appearance. You know why middle school girls don't want to have anything to do with middle school boys? Because the little middle school boys haven't learned the discipline of taking a shower and putting on deodorant. We would go to camp. I would take a group of kids to camp, and we would have middle school boys, particularly middle school boys, 7th and 8th grade boys. They are starting to swoon over girls. And in the list of things to bring to camp, in big, bold, all cap letters, deodorant. And sometimes we had to make those boys take showers. It's amazing how attractive those boys are when they've taken a shower and have deodorant on. You know what? Things don't change as you get older. You know, we still need to keep up our appearance. Personal hygiene is part of that. Appropriate clothing is a part of personal appearance. We're going to talk about something else here in just a bit, and then when we get there, then I'll touch more on this. But sometimes people are wearing things that I could not even think about wearing going out of the house. Right? Oftentimes my wife will ask me, "You think this is appropriate to wear?" I like that. May not be appropriate to wear outside, you know, but I wash my own clothes. That's one of the things that kept that conflict down in the house. I wash, fold, and hang my own clothes, all by myself. And if I need something ironed, I iron it. And if she says that needs to be ironed, guess what I do? I iron it. I like wash and wear stuff. I like dryer sheets that take the wrinkles out, and I hang them up right away because I hate to iron. Well, I knew a couple who husband didn't care what he put on, so much so that his wife even ironed his blue jeans. His blue jeans! To make sure he was going out appropriately. It's not just guys, it's women too. Also, personal appearance. Listen to this. Personal appearance is balanced with character. See, we can talk about personal hygiene, talk about personal appearance. One commentator wrote on Solomon, in Solomon chapter 1, verse 6. This is his paraphrase. He says, "I am far from perfect, yet love is the perfection of my person." I am far from perfect, yet love is the perfection of my person. What does that mean? It means that beauty will never make up for an ugly heart. I don't care how you dress that person up. You can be in a $2,000 tuxedo, walking down Hollywood in the red carpet show-off stuff. And if you have an ugly heart, you're just an ugly person no matter what you wear. And I think it's so important. Proverbs 31:30 says, "Charm is deceptive and beauty does not last, but a woman who fears the Lord will be greatly praised." I see the beauty in my wife, not so much in what she wears or how she smells, but how she loves God and follows Him. I married up, not because she had more money, not because she looks good, even though she does, but because she has a heart that God has a heart going after God, and God has her heart. So we need to know that there's different needs. We need to take care of our personal opinion, and we need to develop friendship with our spouse. Song of Solomon again, chapter 5, verses 10 through 16. My lover is dark and dazzling, better than 10,000 others. His posture is stately. He is desirable in every way. Such is my lover, my friend. How do we become friends with our spouse? How do we become friends within a church community? How do we become friends with God? He wants a friendship with us. We need to spend time talking to one another. We need to spend time talking to one another. Guys, understand, women think of intimacy with the word talk. Not action, talk. And ladies, sometimes us men are short on words. That's just the way life is. We went to one marriage retreat, and for every one word, this couple said, they were a couple. For every one word a man speaks, a woman usually has 3. For every one word, a woman has 3. And he wasn't trying to be mean. They weren't trying to be critical. It means that if I speak 10,000 words, my wife will end up speaking typically 30,000 words. If I ask Jim a question, he will probably give me one or two sentence response to that question. But if I was to ask Dee Dee, she may give me several paragraphs to get to the answer to my question. That's the way God made you. That's just the way God makes us. By the way, He gives you one mouth and two ears, so guess what? Not only do we need to learn to talk to our spouse, we need to listen to what they have to say. You know one of the problems men have? For every word we speak, that you speak 3. By the time you get to the second word, we've lost interest. And we need to be better listeners. So at least listen to 20,000 words. You know, she's going to give you 30. At least listen to 20,000 of them, okay? Because you got 2 ears. Spend time with your spouse. Gina and I make it a point, depending on our caregiver now. It's been 14 years and we've had a caregiver have to come in, so we can't do what we have done in the past. But we always took, I don't know when we started this. I think when we moved to California we did this. We weren't in California long, but when we went to California, I think we started this to make time for breakfast with one another. It cost us a little bit of money and it probably put us in debt just a little bit, but it was worth it. And we still do that. We try. It used to be Mondays, but now things have changed. We try. She now comes on Sunday and Wednesday, so Wednesday we try to have breakfast. And sometimes that's not possible either. But the point being is spending time with one another. And not to make you feel guilty. I hope God convicts you, but I don't want to make you feel guilty. How much time do you spend with God versus anything else you do in your life? Do you make it a point to spend time with God every day? At some point during the day? Compared to all the other things that you do that you make a priority? So develop a friendship with your spouse. Avoid compromising situations by maintaining proper relationships. We're still talking about maintaining your marriage. You see why I had to stop last week? We're still in the third point, how to maintain your marriage. Understand that the needs are different. Take care of your personal appearance. Develop a friendship with your spouse. And avoid compromising situations by maintaining proper relationships. Listen, we should not be complaining about our spouse to anybody but our spouse. And we shouldn't be entertaining people who are talking negatively about their spouse and complaining about their spouse. We don't need to listen, and we certainly don't need to do it to the person of the opposite sex. You don't need to tell your problems to another person of the opposite sex. You shouldn't be doing it. Don't look outside your marriage for deep emotional needs. If you go back to that list, most of the things in the women's needs deal with their emotions, deal with the things that they really desire. And you know what? There are some predators out there. There's some men out there who prey on that. And I don't want my wife to be preyed on that. So guess what? I got to make sure that her needs are being met, so that she doesn't go looking for that from somebody else. Be aware of a sense of electricity between you and another person. You know, some people are just fun to be around. So they just are. Whether they're men or women, they're just fun to be around. You got to be careful. They may make you laugh, but if that continues, guess what? Somebody's going to be crying down the road. So I think you need to pay attention to that. And don't participate in the flirting game. Flirting is dangerous. It's like Russian roulette. If Pete and I decide we want to go out shooting, and then let's have some fun. Let's put a round in the chamber, spin it, and play some Russian roulette. Wouldn't that be fun? We're flirting, but we would never do that. We would never do that. But we do that in our relationships all the time when we start flirting with other people. Oh, it's not going to amount to anything. You want to bet? It's like putting a round in the chamber, spinning it, and putting it to your head, and waiting for it to go off. By the way, the more you squeeze the trigger, the more likely you are for that gun to go off, right? Sooner or later, it's gonna get you. Avoid lingering touches. When we leave here, I'll be in the back of the church. I'll be shaking your hand, giving you a hug. There won't be too many women, though, that I'm going to keep my arms around more than about a half a second. Why? Because she's going to be watching. Why? Because God's going to be watching. Why? Because you all are going to be watching. Now, with that being said, we need to avoid compromising situations by maintaining a proper relationship. If my wife and I are in a proper relationship, and this is real important for us when we were doing youth ministry, some of these emotional issues that teenagers have, we know are temporary. It's like, like a puppy, real to the puppy. And some of these girls that are growing up with fatherless homes do not get the appropriate relationship with a man that they should. And now with everything being heightened, everything's being sexually heightened, guess what? It makes ministering to those young ladies and those young men even more important and yet more difficult at the same time. We had a man who fell prey to that because of whatever going on in his background. I'm not going to make a judgment here. But my wife always knew when I was talking with somebody. My wife knew, and to this day, I've got Liz in our office. I have Corinne in my office. Those ladies can interrupt me at any point if I have somebody in my office. And that's been said right up front. If you came into counsel and you have some personal issues, I'm going to tell you that we may have to break because one of my secretaries may, or one of my assistants might come in and interrupt us. And my wife is always, did I say the word always? I'm sure there's a better Greek word than always. She's always allowed in my office at any time, day or night, no matter what's going on in that office. Why? I want to hold myself accountable. I got a big window. And usually when I'm counseling, if the shades are drawn, I open the shades up. I want to hold myself accountable. Also, I want to hold that other person accountable. There's ways in which we can still do ministry and love each other as families in the church and minister to the church. But at some point, if you come to me with a problem, I'm going to say, we need to get my wife in here with us. This is getting really personal. My wife needs to be here with us. And I've done that. That's a good thing, because you may tell something to her that you won't ever tell to me. But let's not stop ministering. Let's just make sure we do it right. We do it responsibly. And then manage your mind. This is number 5. People just don't fall into immorality. There's a process that follows, and this process develops into an affair. And one of those are accepting sinful thoughts in your mind. James says in chapter 1, verse 14, 15, temptation comes from our own desires which entice us and drag us away. These desires give birth to sinful actions. When sin is allowed to grow, it gives birth to death, and we got to be careful. Also, run from anything that stimulates your youthful lust, he writes to Timothy. Instead, pursue righteous living, faithfulness, love, and peace. Enjoy the companionship of those who call on the Lord with a pure heart. Then Paul says in Romans 16, all the believers have heard that you obey, so I am very happy because of you. But I want you to be wise in what is good and innocent, and innocent in what is evil. You're fooling yourself to assume all is well because there's no physical involvement with the person you're with. Unbelievers don't spend much time here, but church people camp out here thinking there's nothing wrong. I see problems in the church. No, let me back up. Let me just say, let me put it personal. I can visit 7 different women every day of the week. I just can't visit one person 7 days a week in a week. You understand what I'm saying? I can go and visit 7 different women in a week, but heaven forbid, I better not go to that same house 7 times in that week. You right? It creates a problem. If it does not, even if it's innocent, guess what? What's the thought? What's going on? Right? So don't fool yourself. Physical involvement, rationalizing affairs. Jeremiah says, the human heart is most deceitful of all things and desperately wicked. Who knows how bad it is? Folks, we lie to ourselves all the time. I'm not doing anything wrong. They just need comfort and support. And what happens to that comfort and support? That person may not be getting it at home, but you're giving it to them. And guess what might be the next step? Maintain your marriage relationship. Right? That's number 1. Maintain your marriage relationship. And then all those things that went along with it. Number 3, action number 4 is this. Minimize the opportunities. Minimize the opportunities. Don't place yourself in situations where you know you're going to be tempted. 1 Corinthians 10:12. If you think you're standing strong, be careful not to fall. Don't put yourself in positions where you might even be tempted. Don't raise your hand. Please do not raise your hand. Some of you used to be smokers. Sometimes the best way not to smoke is not being around other people who smoke. Right? My dad was he was a smoker. He couldn't understand what the problem was with non-smokers until he quit smoking. All of a sudden, and it was about 2 years after he'd quit smoking, we came out of a restaurant and there's somebody smoking. Man, what a terrible thing that is. He had been doing it for 40 years of his life. He quit cold turkey. But there was a small part of him, listen to me, that wanted to go over and take a drag on that cigarette. Don't place yourself in a position where you know something could happen. Also, don't kid yourself. Don't kid yourself that this is not going to happen. And this is probably the biggest problem pastors have. And either by the grace of God, and I will say this, either by the grace of God, or maybe because of my wife's relationship with me and me with her, I have this heightened awareness that this could happen to me. I don't kid myself. When you let your guard down, guess what happens? You fall. I get in more trouble when I officiate a baseball game when I get complacent. When I'm not paying attention because everything seems to be so routine. Or the score, like it was the other day, was 18-4. You know, it's very easy to get complacent and miss something. Or fall prey to something that you don't need to fall prey to. And as the game was going, I called my partner in. I says, I want to make sure my strike zone stays consistent. I want to make sure you're paying attention. This score is out of hand. We just need to pay attention and get through this game and get out of here. Don't fool yourselves. Don't think this couldn't happen, because it can happen to you. So guard, that's the third thing. So guard your life. That's the third thing. Guard your life. Limit your travel without your spouse. That's been very difficult for us the last 14 years. It just has been. We haven't been able to do the things that we would do in the church normally because of her situation. And I've limited myself to how many visits I make to certain people. Choose your friends carefully. Paul says, do not be deceived. Evil company corrupts good habits. Establish guidelines for yourself. Establish guidelines. Didn't the Lord make you one with your wife? So guard your heart. Remain loyal to her, to the wife of your youth. Establish guidelines for your office or your workplace. Establish guidelines for your surroundings when you go out with the guys or you go out with the girls. Establish guidelines for your off time. Is everybody tired? Are you awake? Well, let me close. Okay? Don't nest. Don't nest. Pay attention. Steps to affair-proof your marriage. Make a commitment to God's standards. Magnify the consequences of your actions. Maintain your marriage. We spent the majority on this message, maintaining your marriage. And 4, minimize the opportunities. But also, you need to know there's a pathway back to purity should you have fallen in this area. And the first step of that is to acknowledge the sin. David, a man after God's own heart, got complacent. The Bible tells us that when it was time for kings to go to war, David tarried still in Jerusalem. He wasn't where he needed to be. He wasn't where God expected him to be. He decided to stay behind in Jerusalem while his soldiers fought the war. And it got warm one day, so he took a walk on his palace where it was cool, and he looked down, he sees a young lady bathing. And he desired her. He commits adultery with her. And in the process, she becomes pregnant. In order to hide that sin, he calls her husband home to sleep with her, but he does not, because he's a faithful soldier. He's got other needs that he needs to take care of before he takes care of his own needs. So he sleeps outside the door, and so he sends him back, and he tells Jonathan, put him where what fighting is the fiercest. Why? To have him killed. Which is called what? Murder. He commits adultery, then he tries to hide his sin, and that didn't work. He has the husband killed. And then he takes Bathsheba as his wife, and he thinks he gets away with it until Nathan comes and says that you have sinned. And in one of his Psalms, this is what he says. Have mercy on me, O God, because of your unfailing love. Because of your great compassion, blot out the stain of my sins. Wash me clean from my guilt. Purify me from my sin. For I recognize my rebellion. It haunts me day and night. Against you and you alone I have done what is evil in your sight. And you will be proved right in what you say, and your judgment against me is just. You say, well, how can he apologize to Bathsheba's husband? How can he apologize to Bathsheba? Hasn't he committed sins against them too? Yes, but his ultimate sin is against God the Father himself and his rebellious nature. And he acknowledges his sin. We too need to acknowledge our sin. And we need to put our trust and faith in God. We need to put our trust and faith that God is faithful, and we can trust Him for the forgiveness of sins. We can trust Him to strengthen, to overcome temptation. And we can trust Him to put faith in our lives and put things back together again. Acknowledge the sin. Put your trust and faith in God in ungodly relationships immediately. Maybe nothing has happened. Maybe you're just involved in some emotional thing and nothing has happened. End it now. Maybe you're emailing somebody and you're flirting over email. Stop it. End it now. And then avoid all contact from people who will lead you astray. Do you see the spiritual connection here? Do you see the spiritual connection? Not just for husband and wives, not just for church members, but individually. God is the bridegroom. We're the bride. Do you recognize your infidelity to God? Do you recognize your adulterous behavior in the relationship you have with Him? And do you understand He stands ready not only to forgive you of your sins, but to restore you into proper relationship? And if He can do that with you, He can do that with us. I've seen it time and time again. What is keeping you from a restored relationship? From God, from somebody in the church, or maybe your spouse? Fix it. Do it this morning. Would you pray with me? Father, thank you for this time together. Thank you for sharing with us. Father, thank you for the book of Solomon, who, yes, it is an impassioned letter of two people in a physical relationship, an emotional relationship. But Father, it also shows us the spiritual relationship we need to have with you, and how much you love us, how much you care for us. And that we are naked before you. And despite our warts, despite our shortcomings, despite our sins, we bear naked to you, and you look at us and say, you are the lily of the valley among thorns. I don't know how you do that, but I thank you for doing it. And Father, there may be somebody here who has had a restored relationship. They've worked very hard to maintain. Maybe they've faltered before. They worked very hard. Father, I ask you to continue to work in their lives. Perhaps there's somebody in here who needs to restore a relationship. Maybe it's with a spouse, maybe it's with a child, maybe it's with a church member. Maybe, Father, it's with you. May we confess to you and help us, Father, to restore our vineyard. Help us keep the foxes out of there. And may we do things that will glorify your name. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Would you all stand? And I'm going to be up the front. If God has laid it upon your heart and you go, I don't understand this invitation thing. This invitation thing is, I'm inviting you to change your life. Maybe you need not talk to me. Maybe you need to talk to God, and you need to do so at the altar. Maybe you need to get up from where you're at and go to somebody in this auditorium and say, hey, I'm sorry for what I've done. Maybe somebody's been saying sorry for a long time. You haven't accepted that apology. Maybe it's time you say, you know what? I'm ready to forgive. Maybe you've never asked Jesus to come into your life for a restored relationship with God. I would like to help you with that. So I invite you to come forward. Either talk to me or come talk to God as we sing this song. But you come right now.